All right. Hello. Welcome to State of Play on Mint Press News, your twice a week geopolitical, analytical, editorial news show. Today, we're going to be talking about why Israel hasn't responded to Iran. Also, it's October 7th. It's the year anniversary of a horrendous conflict, a conflict that I thought honestly would have been ended last New Year's, like on the 1st. That's when the first time we thought a ceasefire was going to go through. But now it turns out no ceasefire is going to happen anytime soon. In fact, we could be getting into a wider regional war within the next few hours because it's rumored that Israel is going to respond today or tonight, rather. It's currently 8 + 4. Oh, it's currently midnight, I guess, in Tel Aviv. And so this is perfect time for airstrikes against Iran, right? First of all, before we get into all that, we're on Patreon here at Mint Press News. We are a independent newsroom, no corporate sponsors, demonetized on all platforms. So if you want to check us out on Patreon, slaying us $5 a month, that's very helpful. And if you don't want to, because we're all struggling in this late stage finance capitalism dystopian nightmare, got it. But if you could like, share, and subscribe, maybe comment, because that helps drive the video and the algorithm so it gets out to more people. We appreciate it. We're just really glad you're here. So now it's October 7th, and we knew this was going to be the most tedious, frustrating day in media. And boy, it did not disappoint. Everyone wants to be, a bunch of victims. Like, things were getting really out of hand. So just real quick, while everybody filters in, let's just check out this French Zionist absolutely trying to, get a soundbite, trying to get I don't know what's happening. You guys can determine what's happening, but this was at an anti-genocide conference in France today. That's a grown-ass man, in case you're not tracking. And look, that's just case in point why the Lebanon front is not going well. We've talked about this at length. They have no achievable goals in Lebanon, the Israeli Defense Force. Apparently, they've penetrated 300 meters, a whole 300 meters into Lebanon, and they're establishing a quote-unquote buffer zone. I think it's convenient that they don't really have any defined military objectives, which allows them to claim victory without actually accomplishing anything. So that's very convenient. But we're on the threshold potentially of a war with Iran, and you might feel like the world's insane and you need to rant. And if you want to put it into words perfectly on this October 7th, here it is.
Uh-oh, Nobel Prize winning economist here.
I think this sums up the feelings of a lot of Americans and citizens in the West. And I think if you're in the global South, you can definitely connect with this. It definitely seems that a lot of people since last October have started to wake up to the predicament that is modern Western society and how it's kind of crumbling. And we do wars. We do a bunch of shady, corrupt stuff. And when a natural disaster hits, we just send another $8 billion to Israel. To this date, we have sent on this, the anniversary of October 7th, since October 7th, $17.9 billion sent to Israel in military aid. And FEMA, the government disaster relief organization in the United States, in case you're not a U.S. citizen and you're not tracking what that organization does, they are $9 billion short in funding to deal with this Hurricane Helene that has wrecked the southeastern seaboard in the United States. But yeah, here we go. Let's get to the rant. This one's a good one, and it's cathartic for everybody.
To tell us how great the economy is. I certainly wonder how the residents of Asheville, North Carolina must be feeling right now with no access to power or water or communication with the outside world. I wonder how enthusiastic they are about the economy right now. I wonder how enthusiastic the residents of the South Bronx must be feeling about the economy. Hey, maybe North Carolina should rename itself Israel so it'll get $20 billion in aid.
Whoa. Okay, that's a zinger. It's a zinger right there.
Or maybe Ukraine so it can get $300 billion in aid. Maybe the South Bronx should do the same thing. I mean, I'm sure the economy is great for smug liberals like yourself who make $5 million and are worth $5 million. I'm sure the economy must be great for all you smug journalists, economists. All of you must be having a great time with the economy when most people can't even pay for basic necessities, for people who are getting evicted because they can't pay their rent. Because over in the South Bronx, just a few miles away from here, there are portions of buildings that are literally collapsing. And I'm supposed to give a shit about the stock market? You want to know why the presidential election is tied right now? Because our money is being sent to Israel and Ukraine so that they can continue to bomb innocent women and children. You think that's a great economy? I'm sure Israel, with their free healthcare, is having a great time with American taxpayer money. Hey, is anyone here going to talk about the fact that we could be in war with Iran in a few days? Or do we need to focus on the S&P 500? Is that
Yeah, we definitely need to focus on the S&P 500. That's really what matters right now.
what actually matters? The S&P 500, when most people may not even be alive here in a few days just because we're on the verge of nuclear war. Hey, listen to me, Mr. Krugman. Your degree is worthless. You might as well use it as paperweight because it means nothing. I hope you enjoy the dead children that the economy is powering. Our economy is definitely very powerful right now. All that stock market money goes to the military complex so that more innocent women and children are dead. And fuck off with the New York Times, the liberal apologists for war and genocide. You all fucking suck. People need to wake up right now, and we need to have peace. We can work with China. We can work with Russia. We don't need to start war with Iran.
Well, yeah, just dropping bombs, especially when it comes to the New York Times, because it's liberal. It talks about, equal rights for everybody. We don't want a prison industrial complex. We need a more egalitarian society. They're not really about that. New York Times has never been about that. They manufacture consent for war. We were actually just, when Netanyahu was speaking in New York, we flew up. I was with veterans for peace, and we were actually just blowing up the New York Times entryway, because, that's what the New York Times does. It manufactures consent for interventionalism, because imperialism is the highest stage of capitalism, and colonialism is the highest stage of imperialism, and genocide is the highest stage of colonialism. And that's what we're seeing right now. And that's kind of like what all these liberal media outlets are doing. And I saw someone in the comments saying, oh, I was a former liberal, I think. Yeah. Someone says, yeah, the New York Times is propaganda for empire. It definitely is. But I don't know. I feel like a lot of people who styled themselves as liberal as of last October. As of October. Yeah. Jessica, I was definitely one of those former libs who woke up in the last year. I mean, you kind of have to, because it's all connected, right? All these things that are happening are connected. I think Greta Thunberg, the original climate activist, she was a media darling at first because she was so young and precocious and intelligent, but she kind of lost that. The media spotlight when she started connecting climate change to capitalism. And now she is definitely blacklisted now that she's connecting climate change to capitalism and genocide. Like literally all the problems that we have right now are all connected within the same system. It's just that the Palestinians and now the residents of southern Lebanon are getting it worse than anybody else. And so let's check on how Israelis in some of the torture prisons, the torture camps, celebrated their October 7th. Okay, this is like a bunch of prison guards and military personnel just having a great time celebrating October 7th in these camps. I guess they're in riot gear, and they're gonna like throw flashbangs and just terrorize people because why not, right? Oh yeah, and Israeli journalists are filming this and taking part in this as well, which you'll see presently. I don't know why they're in riot gear when everyone's literally locked in a cage, but okay. Also, this is the last comment I'll make before I just play it. Like, there's something so infantile and juvenile, but also violent at the same time. It's a very strange combination. So these videos were widely shared among Israeli journalists and settlers, aiming to threaten and intimidate the broader Palestinian population outside of the prisons. Yeah, I can definitely see that. Well, yeah, and they say that Israel's a terrorist state. I wonder where they get that from. It just kind of makes zero sense to me. So, October 7th, this would be the symbolic time for Israel to attack Iran. Now, here's a couple problems with that. First of all, what would they accomplish? Okay, we know that the commander of CENTCOM, U.S. Central Command, a full-star general, went to Israel, flew back to the United States yesterday, and obviously the plans for retaliation against Iran were talked about. Now, what exactly would Israel accomplish with the strike against Iran? They wouldn't restore deterrence. They can't do enough damage to actually deter Iran. So they're talking about like targeting high-value sites like nuclear facilities, oil assets. Now, let's talk about the nuclear facilities first, okay? Iranian nuclear infrastructure is underground. A lot of their stuff, their military infrastructure is underground as well. Because when we invaded Iraq in 2003, Iran kind of liked that. We solved their Saddam problem for them. However, they knew that they were next. So when they put all their infrastructure underground, it wasn't to defend against Israel. And this is reductive history, right? But it was to defend against the United States. And even though Israel has some of our equipment, like we give them the F-35s and the 2,000-pound bombs, however, the United States military is far more dangerous. We have far more capabilities than the Israeli military. So these sites are meant to protect against U.S. saturation bombing, not Israeli saturation bombing, which is way less dangerous, actually. Because again, we don't give them everything. So I don't know what they can possibly accomplish. Those are hardened sites underground. They had to drop 80 to 86 bunker buster bombs, 2,000-pound bunker busters. There were a couple different types that they were using to kill Nasrallah in a small tunnel underground complex. The Iranian sites are just way harder to penetrate and damage than that. So, okay, sure, they can target nuclear infrastructure. Do they have the capacity to actually breach anything? Do they have the capacity to hit every site in Iran, even if they knew about all of them? I don't know. Now, the next thing they would try to do potentially is to target oil assets, refineries, stuff like that. But Iran says the IRGC related channels, Telegram channels, and state media outlets have said that any attack against their oil infrastructure will necessitate Iran attacking, United States oil assets in the region. So if you don't like gas prices now, well, you're going to hate it once we start taking rounds and the Strait of Hormuz gets shut down and you're paying fucking $200 just to fill up your car right before an election. This entire situation is an absolute unmitigated mess. Now, the interesting thing about the Iranian strike is that it gave Israel an off-ramp to de-escalate because they could pump through their media that, it wasn't effective, like the Iron Dome stopped everything. It didn't. They put rounds on target on actual military bases. We don't have an assessment of what actual damage was done, but we know it happened, right? But most of the Israeli public is not prepared to accept that. So they could have just been like, look how backwards Iran is. They can't even shoot missiles at us without our Iron Dome taking it down. They're just a paper tiger of a military, completely incompetent. And we don't even need to respond because that attack was so embarrassing. So they could have done that. They won't because late stage settler colonialism only understands violence and force. So another option, they could do some sort of electronic warfare, like some hacking to attack Iran's infrastructure. They did that with their nuclear program a while ago. It was the first cyber attack in history. It was done with Western intelligence agencies as well. And they could do something like that, but I don't think that. They want a spectacular show of force because the entire society is inherently violent. That's how they communicate with their people. Force, domination, and this all goes back to their obsession with rape and sexual violence, because none of those things are never about actual gratification. They're just about reinforcing power dynamics. Their entire society revolves around power dynamics. It's a settler colonial state, domination, repression, supremacy. So I do see them actually striking Iran. I mean, I hope they don't. I don't see the U.S. getting involved. I just, based off the far right government, and now Netanyahu is still riding a wave of public euphoria from the pager attack, the walkie-talkie attack, the targeted killings, and the assassination of Nasrallah. He has consent now to just do a bunch of wild stuff, to invade Lebanon, to activate another division that's being sent into Lebanon, and now to bomb Iran. Now, what do they hope to accomplish? Iran will respond. They'll never have like boots on the ground fighting each other. It's what we call a distance conflict. All right, so they don't, because they don't have contiguous territories, and no one's going to do like a marine landing in Iran or in Israel. They're just going to be shooting back and forth at each other. And the United States, will they get involved and actually start doing that? Well, again, I've said multiple times how vulnerable United States military assets, and of course, as I mentioned, oil assets are in the region. So if Iran can get through the Iron Dome, they can concentrate fire on U.S. bases in the Gulf, and also militia groups in Iraq can probably expel U.S. forces just by themselves, because there's not a lot still in Iraq, and there's not a lot of combat units. So it's mostly just support personnel. So there goes U.S. presence in Iraq. Bases in the Gulf could get deleted. It's just absolute insanity. And the crazy thing is, none of this is necessary. Israel's not, we don't get anything from them. Like, they talk about them being our like only ally in the region. It's like, please, the Egyptian government's not an ally. They're like indebted to the IMF and World Bank. Jordan, the Hashemite monarchy, installed in part by the CIA, isn't an ally in the region. Give me a break. It's all this false narrative. And now people are waking up after a year of watching a genocide and a failing of U.S. foreign policy, a degradation of the global rules-based order, and basically the things that have, kept the world stable, whatever, since the post-World War II days, are just completely crumbling. So what are we and where are we going to go from there?
All right.
Wait, what was I going to, sorry. I was going to play something. I, just like you, am completely exhausted by everything. I've been doing this every day for a year. I'm taking a vacation next month, and I encourage you guys to do this too, because at the end, I am a anti-war activist before I'm like an analyst or like a journalist or whatever. And I often look to the Vietnam backlash. 10 years we were bombing over 2 million people in Vietnam, Cambodia, Laos. Thousands and thousands of Americans were dying, drafted against their will to fight in a stupid imperial war to back up a fascist government in South Vietnam. 10 years. And there's no ceasefire in sight. And this is like one thing I want to drill down on now that it's October 7th and we're the 1 year anniversary. Get ready for a whole nother year. Okay. A whole nother year of this. It's not going to change. Like, nothing's going to stop it. The only thing we can do is keep waking people up, and Americans will only care about an issue. And I think this is true to a certain extent for most Europeans as well. They only care about an issue if it directly affects them. So when describing what's happening, use Hurricane Helene in the situation that's happening in the southeastern seaboard. FEMA's $9 billion under budget. And we just sent the same day of the hurricane hit, we sent $8.7 billion to Israel. So yeah. And guess what Israel was creating? And they just brought that up. If you look at this, where is it? Oh yeah. They created a whole new acronym, WCNSF, Wounded Child, No Surviving Family. So that's why residents in South Carolina, they don't have electricity. If they're diabetic, their insulin's gone bad. They have no contact with the outside world. But at least we're sending money to Israel to continue to do this. I think what's happened over the past years, a lot of people, not everyone, plenty of people are still like listening to Taylor Swift, going to Starbucks, just being like, even though the world's on fire. A lot of people have woken up to see how this is connected to cops, how this is connected to the fact that you don't have affordable housing, how this is connected to why you can't ever afford to get sick or get in an accident because you cannot afford life-saving treatment. And it's all connected to this genocide. It's connected to climate change. It's connected to finance capitalism. It probably stems from finance capitalism, depending on your philosophical stance. But that is the main thing that people are taking away. And again, 10 years for Vietnam. It's going to take time to get more people on board. And I'm concerned in the movement about gatekeeping, being like, yo, what the fuck, dude? It's been like a year and you still don't even, you're still talking about Hezbollah talking points. Yeah, it's going to happen. It's going to happen a year from now. It's going to happen 2 years from now. Ceasefire is not going to happen in Gaza anytime soon. A ceasefire in Lebanon is potentially more probable sooner, but that's a whole different issue. Still, we're looking at an escalation with Iran, potentially, and we have a few more rungs on the escalation ladder to go up. Potentially, there could be U.S. boots on the ground in the next few months. It would be insane, but again, we've seen insane stuff before, like invading Iraq for a lie. This is what the United States does. So I wouldn't, hold that much hope. And I'm sorry, guys, I'm burned out. I'm sure you're burned out. So let's all just be okay with that for a while. And someone said Taylor Swift also endorsed Killer Kamala. And I just want to make this a side note because we're just kind of like riffing this session. Taylor Swift released 19 studio albums, not a single blast beat in any of them. Absolute trash. So she does absolutely nothing for me. So, yeah, the Iranian escalation, I guess we're kind of waiting on it. This is kind of like a really awkward time to be airing an episode because it's like, it could literally happen like right now. It could be happening right now for all we know. I still hold out hope that it won't be completely insane, but let's just check Israel news, just to make sure that this isn't going off the rails. So pulling up Israel news. All right, so yeah, U.S. spends more than $20 billion to aid to Israel. The Middle East conflicts report. Vance gives full-throated endorsement of Israel. Hezbollah fighting intensify as memorials mark war anniversary. Harris word salad answer on Israel line. Okay, cool. Looks like Iran still isn't kicking off yet, so that's awesome. Now, the main gist of this episode was, why isn't Israel responding quickly? Like, they have the most momentum right now. This weekend would have been the best time for them to hit Iran. But they didn't. One of the main reasons for that is because they don't have, and no one really has, a good grasp of the geopolitical ramifications that would come from striking Iran. How would Iran respond? How would Russia respond? Because Russia is part of this. We have unconfirmed reports that the IAF, the Israeli Air Force, struck near or on a Russian ammunition depot in Syria because, the Russians are in Syria. They've got air defense platforms there that they run to protect government assets. They also train the Syrian army. They're just over there too. Russia might want chaos in the region to expand its own influence in the Middle East, but it doesn't want a war either. Iran doesn't want war. The United States is in a really confusing policy position because the United States complex doesn't necessarily want another war in the Middle East. They're stretched them in Ukraine. Again, we bring this up all the time. They're trying to isolate and suffocate China, and that's being done, through Taiwan, certain aspects of Japan, and they're trying to isolate and contain China. So that's another threat of resources, strain on resources. China's a near-peer military competitor. They're near peer. They're not peer at all, especially navally. That's just the reality of the situation right now. I mean, United States has its own problems with recruiting and stuff, but it's a near peer, definitely not a peer. And the United States doesn't want to get bogged down in another forever war. But now it's been a year. It's been a year of double talk or double speak, Orwellian double speak. And now we're looking at potentially being drawn into a regional war. And so what yeah, sorry guys. It's just I really can't believe we're here. Just can't. And so I think the hypocrisy of US foreign policy is this. It's like they clearly don't want a war with Iran. We proved it. The precedent throughout all of this is there are certain neocons like the Dick Cheneys and the Wolfowitzes and the Rumsfelds and the Mike Pompeos and the neocons will always want to bomb Iran for some nebulous purpose. Lindsey Graham's a great example. And what would that accomplish? Not really, but like the massive industrial complex that is the United States, like CENTCOM, the Department of Defense, the State Department doesn't want another nebulous forever war because the Americans don't want another nebulous forever war in the Middle East, despite what the evangelicals want, despite what the war hawks want. That's like the worst thing for us. However, we're kind of shackled to Israel because we have to support them unconventionally, even though the massive structure of the United States doesn't want a war in the Middle East. We're just gonna go, I don't know, we're gonna back them up. So I think the most pathetic thing I've seen recently was yesterday. It came out that the Biden administration is offering financial incentives for Israel to not hit certain targets. So like, we'll give you more money and political cover and like more ammunition if you don't hit their nuclear sites. And it's like, what the hell kind of weak-kneed policy is that? Israel already gets that. That's not an incentive. They're just going to do it anyways and take what they want anyways. There's no stopping this roller coaster. Yes, it is a sinking ship, Eva. So someone says, keep lying to yourself, Greg. Okay, cool. Thanks. Yeah, I have heard reports that there is a rumor going around. No one's verified it, but there's a lot of seismic activity coming from Iran. And of course, global monitoring stations picked it up. And so people think it could have been a nuke. It'd be interesting if it was. A lot of nuclear proliferation experts say that Iran can't possibly have a nuke. I guess we'll find out. I guess we'll find out when New York City explodes, right? Yeah, so that is a news story that is breaking. I found it through Indian media. I think it was like the Hindustan Times, because of course there's a lot of monitoring stations in India because of their complicated nuclear relationship with Pakistan, and apparently there was a massive seismic event. There was no earthquakes reported in Iran that I have seen, so that's kind of disturbing. And it might be a deterrent if they did. This is completely hypothetical, completely unverified. But if Iran did set off a nuke underground, obviously the United States and Israel would know about it. Then they'd be like, maybe we should just chill out and completely de-escalate. This is not something I expect that we'll hear much more about in the future. I don't think this will ever be verified. I don't really think Iran has a nuke, but it's either way. They don't really need it to deter Israel because nuke or no nuke, with their rocket or their missile arsenal, they can achieve similar target devastation to a nuke. They could level Tel Aviv if they want. If they really wanted to sustain fires and overwhelm the Iron Dome, they could do significant damage to major cities, shut down ports, everything. It's kind of mutually assured destruction in a way, because if you remember during the Cold War, one of the Soviets' red lines for going nuclear was a mass bombing campaign by the U.S. Air Force, because even if the U.S. didn't use actual nukes with their B-2 bomber fleets, they could achieve similar target devastation to an actual nuke. So one of the Russians' red lines was if there was a mass air mobilization of conventional bombers. And it's a similar principle with Iran and what they can achieve with their own target devastation capabilities. So, yeah, I think I don't know. Let's just like open it up, guys. It's just 1 year anniversary of all this madness. We're just waiting for the apocalypse. So let's see what we got. Well, we'll do an extended Q&A because why not, guys? All right. Before and since October 7th, Palestinians have gone through it. October 7th and 9/11 every day. Yeah, I mean, I do. Yeah, I think after a year, yeah, I'm trying. We don't even have casualty figures. We don't even know what the casualties are now. A couple months ago, it stopped at 41,000, and it hasn't gone up for a couple months, and it hasn't gone up for a couple months because they can no longer verify. And there's a lot of more people who are unverified. And based off crude casualty rates from similar conflicts, there is probably over 100,000 dead. Easy, potentially two, maybe even more. We'll never know. There are thousands of people trapped and decomposing under the rubble. It probably smells horrible in certain neighborhoods in Gaza because they're just bodies decomposing, and there's no way to find them or get to them. So it's absolute nightmarish atrocity. So how can we please talk about how Israel intentionally wants the U.S. involved? The USS Liberty was an attempt to get the USS involved in a wider war, just like 9/11 was. It's the same thing. I have to disagree about the USS Liberty. I think Israel targeted the USS Liberty because it was a signal intelligence ship, and they were listening to their communications about what was going on in the Sinai. And I don't think they would be delusional enough. The Israelis would have been delusional enough to think that the U.S. wouldn't find out that it was Israel and not the Egyptian Air Force, which, as I recall, was pretty much disabled during the war because the Israelis preemptively struck their Air Force bases. So, but I do think that Israel has been trying to get the U.S. involved in a wider war because they can't wage ground combat. We saw from the 2006 Lebanon war that their strategy doesn't work, that the same problems that they experienced then are what they're experiencing now. Undisciplined ground force, not prepared to fight a real war where you actually have to get out of your APCs and your tanks and actually fight on the ground. An over-reliance on bombing campaigns and decapitation strikes. The Israeli society is obsessed with assassinations and decapitation strikes, even though they don't really work. Nasrallah had been in hiding for 4 years because Israel was trying so hard to assassinate him. And you don't think Hezbollah, their command infrastructure, was prepared to lose him? They'd literally been preparing for 4 years for him to be assassinated. So the decapitation strikes, the targeted bombings, the carpet bombings, they don't work. They didn't work in 2006. They didn't work in the 80s. Like, it just, if you want to defeat Hezbollah, you have to clear through all southern Lebanon, every hill, every ravine, platoon, company actions, clearing, boots on the ground. They're not going to do that. They're going to bomb, stay buttoned up in their tanks, do limited infantry operations, but not in the front lines. There's just no way that they can achieve that. Now they have the insane goal of not just creating a buffer zone, but they're now saying that they are going to defeat and demilitarize Hezbollah. It's never going to happen. So, the insanity continues. And so if they wanted to defeat Hezbollah, they would need the United States military to do that. However, it's been proven that the U.S. is not successful in terms of waging counterinsurgencies. I mean, we're really good at destroying governments, destroying state militaries, anyone's going to get destroyed, and causing massive death and destruction, power vacuums. Yes, that's what the U.S. military is really good at. But counterinsurgencies, not so much. So even if the U.S. was to get involved, like, just a lot of people would die, a lot of shit would get bombed, and what, what did the past 20 years of the global war on terror accomplish? Nothing. Destabilization, death, a filtering of funds from the public sector through the defense contracting complex and into the private. That's what imperial war accomplishes in the modern era. So yeah, we could get involved. Israel wants us involved. I don't think we're going to get involved. Knock on wood. But we will back Israel no matter what, with money, with political cover, and with munitions, just like we're doing in Ukraine. And again, we're not backing down from Ukraine either, because the imperialists, if they're seen to lose once, especially in high-stakes conflict like what they have with Russia, they'll be done forever. They will have lost credibility forever. So Ukraine's going to keep going on. It's going to become a frozen conflict. Iran's now ramping up. I don't see where that's going, just because it's so insane and unprecedented. And one of the things that makes it so insane is, someone wants this video to be shown. Sorry, I got distracted by a private message about a video that we're supposed to play on this channel. If you could pull it up, Jim, whatever you want, whatever we're requested to play, that'd be cool. Yeah, I don't see the U.S. getting involved beyond in a ground capacity. Of course, in a bombing capacity, that could definitely happen. The idea in the public consciousness to bomb Iran has been around since the 1970s. They even turned that Beach Boys song into bomb, 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 bomb Iran, bomb, 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 bomb Iran. Yeah, that's the idea for bombing Iran has been around forever. So we'll see if it actually freaking happens. We're just still waiting to see if that actually goes down. What's next, guys? I'd be interested in your thoughts on Russia.
My house.
And if I don't.
Oh, okay. So this is what. Okay, I'll get to your question in a second, John. This is what we're playing right now.
Steal it. Someone else is gonna steal it.
No one.
Oh, this wasn't Sheikh Jarrah. I didn't know that this video wasn't Sheikh Jarrah.
Is allowed to steal it, يا عمي. Jacob, you know this is not your house.
Yes, but if I go, you don't go back. So what's the problem? Why are you yelling at me? I didn't do this. I didn't do this.
But
it's easy to yell at me, but I didn't do this.
You are stealing my house. Stealing my house.
And if I don't steal it, someone else is gonna steal it.
Yeah, the Sheikh Jarrah stuff's been going on for a while. Yeah, it's just another year of ethnic cleansing. So that's a campaign, Save Sheikh Jarrah, that you could definitely get involved in. I'd be interested on your thoughts on Russia and Iran formally joined forces against Israel. Okay, so Russia and Iran have a formal military relationship. Right. Iranian drones are very important, and Iranian missiles are very important for Russia's effort on the Ukrainian front, to the point where the IRGC is training Russian soldiers on how to use drones. They're building a production facility in Russia to create and mass produce the Shahed drones, the suicide drones that Iran uses. But Russia doesn't want, just like everybody else except for Israel, they don't want a war in the Middle East. They don't want to get involved in it. They'll protect their interests in Syria, but that's about it. And they will continue to have a security relationship with Iran. Iran will send them drones and ballistic missiles. Russia will send Iran air defense systems and electronic warfare systems. So, yeah, but in terms of getting into a war with the West, a hot shooting war with the West on behalf of Iran is not something that anyone's really considering or talking about. At least none of the analysts that I've talked to or that I've read their opinions on. I don't see it either. So the last 30 seconds and Trump in the crosshairs. Oh, also Trump, when it comes to this bomb Iran stuff, he has proven himself to not be, because he occupies a space in the mind of conservatives, especially MAGA people, that he is like an anti-war candidate. They have this idea that no wars were going on under Trump. There was no interventionalism. And now he was just saying, yeah, oh, I think we should bomb Iran, bomb their sites, you know? So he's kind of destroyed his image in the past 24 hours in that regard. Of course, his followers, his cult followers will never recognize that he actually said that, but he did. And it just really just goes to show that any presidential candidate, except third-party candidates, are going to be pro-war, pro this neoconservative stance of bombing Iran. For what? To what purpose? What could you possibly hope to get out of it and achieve? And so when that guy was ranting at the beginning of this video, it's like, yeah, we can work with Iran, we can work with China, we can work with Russia. Russia's foreign policy platform, the core foreign policy platform, no matter how if you hate Putin, if you like Putin, if you're just like, his massive foreign policy push, and this is shared by China as well, is a move towards a multipolar world as opposed to the unipolar US-led world domination scheme. So, and that's really being challenged right now. And now the United States is obsessed with national security. The United States does not tolerate regional hegemons. They see Iran as a regional hegemon. Can't have it. So, yeah, the U.S. will double down to try to reassert its unipolarity throughout the globe. However, we don't have the same power projection. We don't have the same political clout as we did in the 90s. I think the global war on terror, 20 years, really did a number to both the United States military and to our political positioning worldwide. And we're never going to be able to get it back. So we're just going to double down on a proxy war in Ukraine and double down on this insanity in the Middle East, West Asia, excuse me, and hope for the best. The United States is going to fail. The empire is crumbling. It's just a matter of time. How long is that going to take? Maybe it will finally be dissolved at the end of our lifetimes. Maybe, but it's not going anywhere anytime soon. But this is where the cracks. This Israel thing is really where the cracks are starting to show, and people are starting to wake up to how broken fundamentally our society and our politics are. So, seems like the U.S. and the apartheid state want World War III. Again, whether or not they want World War III, they won't back down. The imperialists will not back down. So they're not willing to work with China or Russia or Iran, and they can't be seen as weak, and they can't back down. So whether or not they want, I mean, I guess you can interpret it that way, that they want World War III, because their pride is more important than, the human race surviving. All right. So Israel is confirmed to be using depleted uranium rounds and white phosphorus in Lebanon. Greg, do you know if this is true? Wouldn't be surprised if I'm waiting to see confirmation. I'm pretty sure they're using Sabo rounds. 1 second, guys. Let me pull this up for you so you guys can learn about this. Okay. Stop screen, present, share screen, and here we go. All right, y'all. Sabo rounds. Okay. I'm pretty sure this is what they were using. Sabo rounds is a supportive device used in firearm artillery ammunition to patch around a projectile. Now, a lot of these things are going to have penetrators that are made of depleted uranium. So you got like propellant, a rod penetrator, and they help with like penetrating armor and stuff like this. So a lot of these Sabo rounds will, because they're a penetration round, they will have depleted uranium tips. I don't know why they would be using Sabo rounds, because like they're generally like an anti-armor round, and I don't think really Hezbollah has armor. That being said, I mean, Israel, if they have it, they use it. Now, in terms of the white phosphorus, though, yeah, we've seen videos of that. They've been using white phosphorus on people forever, in southern Lebanon, in Gaza. This is nothing new. There's just too much video evidence to support it. And we've seen them deploy white phosphorus before in southern Lebanon. And I'm sure it's very likely that they're doing it now because there's a lot of fog of war. A lot of telecommunications in southern Lebanon are being jammed or cut. And who's to say what's actually really happening? So do you see Israel existing in 5 years? Yeah. 10? A lot of more experienced analysts than myself say that's like 10's like optimistic if you think it's going to still exist. So if they wanted to exist, they would stop doing genocide and sign a ceasefire and, go back to normal. One of the reasons, so on October 10th, like I knew it was going to be bad, the response. I didn't know it was going to be that bad. Now, looking at this year in retrospect, I didn't actually think it was a genocide until like mid-November. I thought it was more of the Da'iyah doctrine. I didn't. And here's why I didn't think it was a genocide. Just the simple fact that I didn't think that they would be this stupid to actually try it. Because we know that Gaza has always been a problem for them. It's like how can you have the myth of being the only democracy in the Middle East, this enlightened country amongst a bunch of savage Arabs, when you're an apartheid Jim Crow-esque regime. So Gaza was always a problem. They needed it to go away, and equal rights and a one-state solution and democratic norms where everyone is equal and has the same rights is not something that Israel will ever tolerate, because they're an ethno-supremacist state. And if you're not Jewish, you're a second-class citizen or you're a tourist. So they needed to get rid of Gaza, and they just used October 7th as the opportunity to do that. Now, they are trying to do genocide and ethnic cleansing. That's obvious. I didn't think so at first. Well, I knew they were at least doing ethnic cleansing at first, but I didn't think they were actually just trying to kill everybody, because I didn't think they would be that stupid. Because states in the post-World War II era, not during the golden age of colonialism, but in the post-World War II era, don't really last after committing genocide. Or at least the states can continue, but the government, the regimes, they generally change. And that's just a basic political fact. So I didn't think that they would be this stupid to try it. But they are trying it. They're doing it. So 5 years, they'll still exist in 5 years. Yeah. But long term, I mean, Israel as a state could still exist, but this government, there's going to be upheaval. It's coming because the status quo that existed before October 7th, last October 7th, they're never going back. They're never getting it back. The economy will never recover. Their military will never recover. Their image will never recover. Nothing will be the same again. They're already screwed. So it's just a matter of time. Do you think people are more cognizant of the climate crisis because of Hurricane Helene and Milton? I don't know. Do you live in the? Have you ever lived in the South? Like I think people will just see it as a freak disaster, and then it will continue to get hotter and hotter in the United States, and people will continue to just be like, oh well, what can you do? I have very little faith that anyone will become an activist about this that isn't already. But then again, I could be completely wrong, and I'm just really pessimistic because, again, we've been watching a genocide for a year, and people still are like listening to Taylor Swift and going to Starbucks and just like not seeing how it affects them in any way, even though we have a rising police and national security state that's directly connected to what's going on in West Asia. But who knows? I actually don't think it's going to wake too many people up. I don't. Unless people are directly affected, I don't I don't see why people in the Midwest would care, you know? Okay. Why is Turkey not chiming in when a part of Turkey is in the greater Israel plan? Why do you think? Well, Turkey has a security relationship with Israel, and they still trade with Israel. They allow gas to flow from like Azerbaijan to Israel. Erdogan can say a bunch of like spicy stuff about how the Turkish army is going to go in there and liberate Palestine. It's not going to do it. Yeah, Turkey is essentially like part of like the EU. They have a seat at that table. They will, because a lot of Turkey is Muslim, say a bunch of things in support of the Ummah, but they're not going to do anything in terms of foreign policy. They're not going to boycott Israel. They're not going to sanction Israel in any particular way, just like the Gulf states are. So, yeah, sure. Turkey is part of Greater Israel's plan, or at least part of it is. But then again, so is Saudi Arabia. And Saudi Arabia, despite what they say performatively, like, oh, we now have a good relationship with Iran now, they're still playing both sides, and they're still going to maintain a relationship with Israel. MBS still secretly wants to normalize with Israel, so I'm sure he would love to turn Gaza into the new Dubai. Yeah, it's the same thing with a lot of the Gulf states. I don't think the Turkish government is as bad, but the Turkish people are definitely on the right side of this thing. Erdogan is not, though. Remember, the IDF trained our Azov Nazis. Yeah. I haven't really gone down into that rabbit hole about who trained Azov, but I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised if Israel also trained the Nazis and Wagner group that are in like Africa cutting off people's heads in Mali. It's just like, wherever there's dirt, you find the Israeli training in the beginning, like Guatemalan death squads in Central America, trained by the Israelis, of course. Greg, do you think Hezbollah is holding their main missiles back, waiting for the IDF to make a big push? Yeah, or they're just, Hezbollah has lost a lot of missiles, guys. They've hit massive caches in Beirut, in the Bekaa Valley. They still have a ton of missiles, but they're not going to be getting they're in a position where they have to save it for when it really counts. Because they're still going to be able to get some through the Syrian border, but Israel's like really blockading that, and they bombed a lot of bridges and a lot of transportation infrastructure in between Syria and Lebanon. So they still have to decide when and where to use it. And doing attrition operations with rockets is fine, but yeah, you're not going to see a big push until it's like actually game time. So yeah, I do think they're waiting. I also do think they're now finally in a position where they have to count ammunition and be disciplined about how they use ammunition. Are the Israelis actually motivated, along with the U.S. Christian Zionists, by the insane red heifer apocalypse, or is the genocide being driven by seculars? Both religious and secular people are behind this. And they missed their window for the red heifer sacrifice. I think they're going to have to wait for next year. So the Antichrist, guys, isn't coming back until next March at the earliest. But yeah, it's both religious and secular. Because again, imperialism is, not necessarily, it's generally secular. It's justified by religion sometimes, like evangelists going to India to convert the children of darkness, as Benjamin Netanyahu would call them. And it's used to justify that we're here to civilize you and teach you the word of God. No, it's really just about capitalism and resource extraction. But so it's both religious and secular, I would say. And finally, guys, media in the West are busy condemning Hamas and crying over Israel having lost 1,200. Are they worth more than the people of Gaza and the West Bank, and the world community must boycott Israel? Well, yeah, the collective West has dehumanized Arabs for over a millennia. Started along, if you like, even if you go back and read the Divine Comedy by Dante, like in one of the circles of hell, like you can see the Prophet Muhammad. He describes the Prophet Muhammad being like tortured in pornographic detail. Like this is nothing new. The demonization of Islam and people of West Asia, it's nothing new. And so because it's in our cultural consciousness like that, they are seen as not as worthy as white Western lives. And that's been constructed over literally centuries. It's gotten bad in the post 9/11 world, but 9/11 worked and the propaganda worked because that was already there. It already existed. So I guess in short, yes, media in the West see Israeli lives as worth a whole hell of a lot more. And this is nothing new. This is nothing new. I just wish it was over with. And now, on a year-long anniversary of a genocide, we can really reflect on that. And remember, guys, we're out of time, but this is not going to end anytime soon. Years. So continue to agitate, educate, and organize. And also take care of yourselves. Like you're going to have to find a way to continue living and existing in this world. So hobbies are nice. Take care of your mental health. A fascist worked out today. Have you? And with that, we're gonna end this one. Okay, I'll see you guys Thursday. Hopefully, if humanity isn't a smoking ash heap, that would be cool. So we'll do an episode. It'll probably be an interview. Hopefully, I can get someone on to talk about Iran. More people need to know about Iran and about the purposes of the Iranian government, because the Western narrative ain't it, guys. All right, so. Sorry, kind of just riffed for an hour, but thanks for showing up, and we will see you for a more organized episode next time. All right, cheers, y'all.